All right. The House Committee on Ethics and Oversight will come to order. Will the clerk please take the attendance?
Chair Burns.
Here.
Representatives Hope.
Here.
Breen.
Here.
Churches.
Present.
Hoskins.
Here.
Wagella.
Here.
Coons.
Here.
Wozniak.
Here.
Harris. Here. Madam Chair, you have 9 members present, a quorum.
Thank you so much. And now may I have a motion to adopt the minutes from the November 14th, 2024 meeting? All right, Representative Breen makes the motion. Thank you. The minutes are adopted. Welcome, everyone. At today's committee meeting, we will begin with testimony on the Bright Act package, House Bills 5580 and 5582, brought forth by Representatives Brixey and Morgan. They will be joined by Aaron Shore from the Michigan Secretary of State's team to help with any technical questions if necessary. Following that, we do plan to vote on both House Bills 5580 and 5582. So at this time, I would like to invite both Representatives Morgan and Brixey to the table, along with Ms. Shore. And once you're situated, we will begin with testimony from Representative Morgan. And please just remember to press that button to turn your mic on and begin when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Burns, Vice Chair Hope, and Vice Chair Coons, and to the entire committee. Good morning. Thank you for having us here to testify in support of House Bills 5580 and 5582, which are a key part of the Bringing Reforms in Integrity, Transparency, Ethics package, referred to as the Bright Act. This legislation represents a significant step forward in restoring trust in our state government. It represents the beginning of improving transparency and accountability in Michigan's campaign finance laws. And transparency is the cornerstone of a healthy democracy. It's critical that we demonstrate to the Michigan people our commitment to this principle as public servants. Unfortunately, our state and our current laws are falling short. In recent years, there have been charges and investigations that have rocked our state. Existing loopholes have been exploited and abused by leaders that the people trusted to represent them, and the people have had enough. The people are demanding that we act. It is our duty to respond decisively to ensure that such abuses of power can never happen again. There are a number of 527s and 501c4s that are able to act without proper oversight, influencing elections and policy decisions without disclosing their funding sources or affiliations with elected officials or their family members. And so voters are left to guess whether the messages they hear during the campaigns are truly independent or whether they are backed by those seeking personal, political, or financial gain. Filing officials can't enforce what they can't clearly define. And our laws leave too much room for bad actors to exploit our current political system. So every component of the Bright Act, specifically this bill and the others, are designed to fix these vulnerabilities. My bill amends Sections 5 and 7 of the Michigan Campaign Finance Act to define elected officials and 527 and 501c4 groups affiliated with elected officials and candidates. This provides for clearer definitions and tools to enforce our campaign finance laws effectively, ensuring voters know who is truly funding the messages and policies that they see. Alongside House Bill 5580, this bill requires the disclosure of these connections through registration with the Secretary of State. They also provide the necessary tools to hold violators accountable. These bills aren't just about fixing our broken laws. They're about rebuilding trust in our state government. Together with the rest of the Bright Act package, this legislation exposes shadowy, dark funding operations that have allowed corruption scandals to flourish. The package creates stronger restrictions on elected officials receiving gifts, and it closes the pipeline of politician to lobbyist. Like many of you, I ran for state representative to help the people. But we can't help the people if we aren't accountable to them. We can't help the people if they are up against the weight of dark money and big corporations. How can we help the people if they don't know who is helping us? So I'm here today, Madam Chair, because this package is the biggest effort in decades to restore trust in our government. With your support, we can move our state from being an example of political scandal to a model of good governance that puts power back into the hands of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Morgan. Rep. Brixey, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. Happy to finally be here before you. And thank you, Rep. Morgan. In Michigan, 527s and 501c4 groups can engage in substantial lobbying and advocacy activities with various degrees of anonymity. Recent years have seen many cases of bad actors in and around Lansing misusing nonprofit funds to take bribes, fund lavish trips, or circumvent donor disclosure laws. Our constituents expect us to implement higher standards for ourselves that go beyond Citizens United. And this legislation is an important first step. My bill 5580 would require 527 and 501c4s affiliated with state elected officials and candidates to register their accounts with the Secretary of State beginning in January of 2026. Affiliation includes having family members, contract employees, or staff members who are employed by, on the board of, or in control of those organizations. We know that many of these nonprofits are being used appropriately. The problem is there's no way of knowing which accounts our elected officials are affiliated with. So the Attorney General and Secretary of State have absolutely no starting point to even identify a bad actor. And Michigan citizens deserve to know when their elected official is involved with a nonprofit account. So our bill also implements a tiered scale of civil penalties that are based on the amount of funds being raised and spent by the account and the number of offenses committed. The elected official or candidate who must be reported is responsible for any civil fines or civil infractions that result from a failure to report. This helps protect nonprofits and the good work they do by putting the burden of reporting and paying fines on the elected or candidate inciting the requirement. Electeds and candidates are already expected to be aware of their reporting requirements with the Secretary of State, so this simple addition is not overly onerous. It's an important first step in shining a bright light on fundraising, restoring trust in our democracy, and putting the public back in the forefront of government policy.
Thank you both for your testimony. We will now open up the floor for member questions. Okay? Yes, Representative Kuntz, go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my question is for the Secretary of State. If these are not reported, how will you know?
My understanding is that these kinds of accounts already file with LARA as corporations when they're formed, and so that information is public. Whether our staff have some ability to comb through those records or whether that's other groups like the Michigan Campaign Finance Network that are helping us do that research, that's how we'll find out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. I have a question for both of you, and thank you again for being here and for testifying on these important bills today. So we know that Michigan has traditionally ranked at or near the bottom nationwide in terms of ethics and transparency legislation. What have you seen with regard to what other states have done or maybe have in process with regard to dark money and kind of shining a light on
that? Thank you for that question, Madam Chair. What we have seen looking at other states is that common practice in Michigan would often be criminal in other states and at the federal level. A lot of the laws that we have in place are substantially inferior today than the federal government and other states to ensure campaign finance, ethics, and accountability. We have the opportunity to do better. This is a really important first step to that. This package will move us from last to somewhere above last. It will not move us to first yet, but this is a first step in the long effort to bring us up to a higher standard of trust and transparency in Michigan's government.
Wonderful. Thank you, Representative. And we have a question from Rep. Wozniak. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the Secretary of State's office. During the last cycle, did you see any evidence or how much evidence did you see of misuse of these two types of accounts where they're hiding money?
I think it's hard for me to quantify
Right, I
misuse.
figured it would
That's
be.
a little bit in the eye of the beholder. I think the biggest problem is that there's so much we don't know right now. There's a lot of money being spent that the public is not aware of that connection between the candidate or the elected office holder and the different types of accounts, because we can see what's reported on the candidate committee side, but not necessarily that connection to the 527 or the 501c4. How much of that is criminal misuse is a different question. I think that's a relatively small proportion of what we're seeing. It's more, as Rep. Morgan mentioned, understanding who's funding politics and those things and how that can influence decision making.
So your department then would actually favor having more transparency, particularly on these two types of accounts?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Other member questions? Yes, Rep. Wagella.
First, I want to thank both of you for your work on this. I don't know. I mean, this is a relatively new report, but the Detroit News just came out with an article yesterday. I think it was yesterday, where in 2023 we saw a 54% increase in the amount of donations to these types of accounts, at least that they could track, or $465,000 increased. And the vast majority of this money going to the leadership in both parties, if we're being honest. We have campaign finance laws and limits, and I personally see this as a loophole to those laws in a way. Can you talk about just how shining light on this can provide the transparency that maybe was intended by the people of Michigan, in the past?
I'll take that one if it's okay with you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question, Representative. So the most biggest question that I get about this is how do you, if you don't know about the accounts, and as Rep. Coons asked, how are you going to know if people are not complying? But the thing is that the folks who are donating to these accounts, by and large, are corporations and large corporations that are making pretty significant donations. And so they're operating within the law. This is totally legal. We allow this to happen. And so by requiring registration, if you are an elected official, that's the first step of transparency. And you aren't going to be getting these companies donating to these accounts if the people aren't registered. They ask for paperwork, they comply, they will be they operate above board, and it's usually the people who are in control of the accounts that are being the bad actors, not the folks who are making the donations to the accounts.
Can I add to that? Thank you for that question, Rep. A common phrase I've heard over the years is that sunlight is the best disinfectant, and that is what we're talking about here today. A lot of these folks who are donating to these accounts are following the law. They're meticulously making sure every bit of paperwork is taken care of and that they're not violating the law. But the problem is the law. The law is not strong enough today, and this is a first step in strengthening the law to ensure that those who do want to comply and who do want to be accountable have stronger laws to ensure that people know who is contributing to these accounts and who's tied to these accounts. So that is a key part of this, is a beginning step in that. And I believe that is fundamentally really important to tackling some of the concerns that you've raised.
All right, thank you, Rep. Wagella. Are there any other member questions for Representatives Brixey and Morgan at this time? All right, seeing no further questions, I'd like to thank you both, and thank you, Ms. Shore. Thank you for bringing these really important bills forward. We know that they're going to be an important first step in addressing dark money in the state of Michigan. So thank you for your work on the bills and in the package. Thank you. All right. We have several cards to read in, and please bear with me in my frog-like voice today. I'm recovering from something. So we'll start with folks who are in support of the package, but not, or the bills, but not wishing to speak. So we have a card from Robert Duda, an RN with the Michigan Nurses Association Retirees Committee in support of both bills, not wishing to speak. We have Logan Vorse with the Michigan League of Conservation Voters in support of both bills, not wishing to speak. And we also have Kim Murphy-Kovalik from Voters Not Politicians, also in support of both bills and not wishing to speak today. And our last card is from Henry or Hank Myers with Michiganders for Fair and Transparent Elections. And Hank, I believe you do wish to speak today, so please come up to the testimony table, press that red button to turn your mic on when you're ready.
Good morning, members of the House Ethics and Oversight Committee. I'm pleased to be here today and to talk about another piece of legislation that has as its goals reforming our mostly out-of-control campaign finance practices and their related corruption in our democracy. I'm Hank Mayers, and I'm president of Michiganders for Fair and Transparent Elections. And this is my second appearance before this committee to comment on bills that would begin the long overdue reform of Michigan's campaign finance practices. As I understand it, we're discussing the following two bills. The first is 8850, which creates a finance reporting obligation for two classes of nonprofit organizations with very modest penalties for nonconformance: the 501c4 social welfare nonprofits, as well as the 527 nonprofit political groups. The second bill, 5582, provides definitions for those 501c4s and 527s that must conform to the new reporting requirements that are stated in 5580. The organizations that will need to meet these reporting requirements will include those controlled or influenced by a candidate, an elected official, or an appointed elected official, or individuals employed by the elected official, or direct relatives of the EO and their spouses. What pleases our group about this legislation is that it's the first bill to take any action on any dark money group involved in our election, all of whom are seriously undermining the credibility of our elections. And as candid members of this legislature will acknowledge, dark money is indeed frustrating the ability of this legislature to do the people's work. These two realities have not been missed by a growing segment of our citizens, and confidence in our governmental institutions continues to decline to very concerning levels. So taking any action on dark money is a welcome legislative event, and for that reason, Michiganders for Fair and Transparent Elections support the passage of these two bills. Dark money groups controlled by legislators is an even more concerning transparency issue, and especially the financial transparency in performing the people's work is essential to a healthy democracy. This view was clearly reiterated by the voters as recently as 2022 with the passage of the financial disclosure ballot measure by a resounding majority of 66% of those voters. As everyone in this room knows, illegal use of dark money entities has indeed led to the indictment and/or imprisonment of 2 or 3 former speakers and staff of this very chamber of the legislature. So we commend and support this committee for addressing this terrible abuse of the public trust. I appreciate Representative Wagella's comments about the article that I think was either yesterday or today, which laid out the situation nicely. I would like to take this opportunity with this committee to be clear that we are disappointed that HB 5580 does not include financial reporting by these legislator-influenced dark money groups. Activity that takes place in the people's house by their elected representatives, and especially the movement of financial resources intended to influence them, clearly needs to be subject to full disclosure and easy access to that disclosed information by the public. It's our sincere hope that the next legislature will take the next important step of adding the required financial reporting by legislator-influenced dark money groups so that they will no longer be dark. Finally, in spite of these concerns, Michiganders for Fair and Transparent Elections fully support reporting out HB 5580 and HB 5582, and hopefully its eventual passage by both chambers of this legislature. We also thank this House Ethics and Oversight Committee and its chair, Representative Burns, for your work in bringing these bills forward. And finally, we wish to express our thanks to the sponsor of these bills, Representatives Brixey and Morgan. Thank you for the opportunity to share our views with you on these two bills.
Thank you, Mr. Myers, for your comments today. Do members have any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, I would entertain a motion to report out House Bill 5580 with recommendation. Representative Hope makes that motion. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Chair Burns,
Yes.
Representatives Hope,
Yes.
Breen,
Aye.
Churches,
Yes.
Hoskins,
Yes.
Wagella,
Yes.
Kuntz,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Pass.
Harris.
Pass.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays, and 2 pass. The motion prevails.
Thank you. House Bill 5580 has been reported with recommendation. There is an H1 substitute for House Bill 5582. Now I'll need a motion to adopt the substitute. Do we have a motion? Representative Wagella makes that motion. Thank you. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Chair Burns,
Yes.
Representatives Hope,
Yes.
Breen,
Aye.
Churches,
Yes.
Hoskins,
Yes.
Wagella,
Yes.
Kuntz,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Pass.
Harris.
Pass.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays, 2 pass. The motion prevails.
Thank you. The substitute is adopted. I will now entertain a motion to report out House Bill 5582 with recommendation as an H1 substitute. Do we have a motion? Representative Breen makes the motion. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Chair Burns,
Yes.
Representatives Hope,
Yes.
Breen,
Aye.
Churches,
Yes.
Hoskins,
Yes.
Wagella,
Yes.
Kuntz,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Pass.
Harris.
Pass.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays, 2 pass. The motion prevails.
Thank you. House Bill 5582 has been reported with recommendation as an H1 substitute. At this time, seeing that we have no absent members and no further business before the committee, I do, before we adjourn, just want to thank again Representatives Morgan and Brixey for bringing forward this really critical legislation that will help move our state forward with regard to transparency. And I think go a long way in restoring the public's trust in what we do here. So thank you both. Thank you, Ms. Shore and Mr. Myers, for testifying today. Thank you to our committee members. And seeing that we have no further business, the House Committee on Ethics and Oversight is adjourned.